The old curé murmured the final words of his sermon over the white caps of the peasant women and the tousled or neatly combed heads of the men. Huge baskets belonging to the farm wives who had come from afar for Mass stood at their feet. In the stifling July heat, the crowd exuded the persistent scent of livestock, the smell of the herd. Through the open church door came the cries of roosters, mingled with the lowing of cows resting in the nearby pasture. From time to time, a gust of air, rich with the fragrance of the fields, would rush through the church portal, lifting the long ribbons of the women's caps and making the pale yellow flames of the altar candles tremble. "That will be done." "Amen," the priest intoned. He fell silent, opened his book, and, as he did every Sunday, began to inform the congregation of the small matters and needs of the parish. The curé was a white-haired old man who had tended his flock for nearly 40 years, and the sermon served as a means of closer communion with his parishioners. He continued, "I ask your prayers for Desire Vallon, who is gravely ill, and for Pomel, still recovering from childbirth." He paused, rummaging through the slips of paper tucked into his missal. At last, he found two and went on. "Young men and women should not be strolling through the cemetery in the evenings, or I'll have to speak to the groundskeeper. Monsieur Césaire Almont is looking for an honest girl to take into service." He pondered for a few seconds, then added, "That is all, brethren. May the grace of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be with you." He stepped down from the pulpit to conclude the Mass. When the Malandins returned to their hut on the outskirts of the village of Sablières, on the road to Fourville, the father, a dry, wrinkled old man, sat down at the table and spoke while his wife took the soot-blackened pot off the fire, and their daughter, Adélaïde, fetched glasses and plates from the cupboard. "Maybe we really ought to try placing Adélaïde with Monsieur Almont. He's a widower, doesn't get along with his daughter-in-law, lives alone, and has money. Why not send Adélaïde to him?" The wife set the pot on the table, lifted the lid, and fell into thought, while steam rose toward the ceiling along with the smell of cabbage. The husband went on, "He's got money, I know that for sure, but she'll need to be lively, and Adelaide's got none of that in her." The wife objected. "Still, it's worth a try." Then, turning to her daughter, a dull-looking girl with yellow hair and plump, rosy cheeks like apples, she shouted, "Listen, you silly thing. Go to Uncle Almont and tell him you want to work for him, that you're ready to do whatever he asks." The girl gave a foolish grin and said nothing. All three began to eat. About 10 minutes later, the father spoke again. "Listen, girl, try to take in what I'm about to tell you." He laid out a whole plan of conduct, slowly and in detail, anticipating every little nuance to prepare her for winning over the old widower who couldn't get along with his kin. The mother stopped eating and turned all her attention to him. Fork in hand, she shifted her gaze from husband to daughter, silently and intently following the instructions. Adélaïde sat motionless, her eyes vague and wandering, obedient and dim-witted. As soon as lunch was over, the mother told her to put on her cap, and the two of them set off for Monsieur Césaire Almont's. He lived in a brick wing adjoining the farm buildings where his tenant had settled. Almont himself no longer worked the land and lived off his income. He was about 55, fat, cheerful, and grumbling, as prosperous men often are. He laughed loudly, shouted so the walls trembled, drank vodka and cider by the glassful, and despite his age, still had the reputation of a fiery man. He liked to wander through the fields with his hands clasped behind his back, leaving deep imprints of his sabots in the rich, damp soil, observing the sprouting grain or the blooming rapeseed with the calm, unhurried gaze of a connoisseur to whom all this, though dear, no longer truly belonged. People said of him, "He's like the weather, not always pleasant." He received the women while seated at the table, his belly pressed against it, finishing his coffee. Leaning back, he asked, "What brings you here?" The mother spoke. "I've brought you our daughter, Adélaïde. This morning the cure mentioned you were looking for a maid." Uncle Armand glanced at the girl and asked sharply, "How old is this goat?" "She'll be 21 come St. Michael's Day, Monsieur Armand." "All right, 15 francs a month and meals. I expect her tomorrow morning. She'll make me breakfast." And he dismissed them. The next day, Adélaïde began her work, silent and diligent, just as she had been at home with her parents. Around 9 in the morning, while she was washing the kitchen windows, Monsieur Armand called out, "Adélaïde." She ran in. "I'm here, sir." Standing before him, flustered, her red hands hanging helplessly, she heard, "Listen carefully, so there's no misunderstanding later. You're my maid, period. Got it? We won't be leaving our sabots side by side at night." "Yes, master. Each to their place. You, the kitchen, me, the parlor. Apart from that, everything's equal." "Agreed." "Agreed, master." "Good. Get back to work." She returned to her task. At noon, she laid the table for him in the small, wall-papered parlor, and when the soup was ready, she came to announce, "Dinner is served, master." He entered, sat down, looked around, unfolded his napkin, paused for a moment, then roared in a thunderous voice, "Adélaïde." She rushed in, terrified. He shouted as if he meant to kill her, "Damn it, you! Where's your place?" "But, master," he kept growling, "I can't eat alone, damn it. Sit down at the table, or get out if you want. Bring yourself a glass and a plate." Half dead with fear, she fetched another setting, murmuring, "I'm here, master," and sat down opposite him. Then he brightened, clinking glasses, slapping the table, telling stories she listened to with downcast eyes, not daring to utter a word. From time to time she got up, for bread, for cider, for plates. When she brought the coffee and placed a single cup before him, he grew angry again. "And you?" "I don't drink coffee at all, master." "Why not?" "Because I don't like it at all." He burst out again. "And I don't like drinking alone, damn it. If you won't drink with me, get out. Bring a cup, and be quick about it." She brought a cup, sat down again, tasted the black liquid, winced, but under his fierce gaze drank every drop. Then she added down one shot of vodka, like a post, the second like a hawk, the third like a little bird. Then Monsieur Armand dismissed her. "Go wash the dishes. You're a fine girl." The same happened at supper. Afterward, she had to play a round of dominoes with him. At last, he let her go to bed. "Go lie down. I'll be turning in soon myself." She climbed to her room, an attic under the roof. She prayed, undressed, and slipped under the blanket. Suddenly she sprang up, seized by fear. The walls trembled under a furious roar. "Adélaïde!" She cracked open the attic door and called out, "I'm here, master." "And where is here?" "Already in bed, master." Then he bellowed, "Will you come down or not? Damn it. I can't sleep alone, damn it. And if you won't, get out, damn it." She cried out from above, frantic, fumbling for a candle. "Right away, master." He heard her little sabots, slipped on a bare feet, clattering down the pine staircase. When she reached the bottom steps, he took her by the hand, and as soon as she had removed her narrow wooden clogs and placed them beside the master's enormous sabots, he shoved her into the bedroom, grumbling, "Turn around, damn it!" And she kept repeating, without grasping the meaning of her own words, right away, master." 6 months passed. One Sunday, she came to visit her parents. Her father, studying her closely, asked, "You're not pregnant, are you?" She stood there, staring blankly at her belly, and repeated, "No, I don't know." To get a straight answer, he asked bluntly, "Tell me, have you two been putting your shoes side by side in the evenings?" "Of course. I did the very first night, and the nights after that, too." "Then you're knocked up, you fat barrel." She burst into tears, babbling. "But how was I to know? How was I to know?" Old Malindin, squinting with clever satisfaction, tried to catch her at her words. "What do you mean you didn't know?" Through sobs, she whispered, "I didn't know they could make babies." Her mother entered. The husband, unruffled, said, "She's pregnant." But the wife flared up, instinctively outraged, and lunged at the weeping girl, calling her a fool and a hussy. The old man told her to be quiet. Putting on his cap to go speak with Uncle Césaire Almont, he muttered, "She's even dumber than I thought. Didn't know what she was doing, the little idiot." The following Sunday, after the sermon, the old cure announced the upcoming wedding of Monsieur Honoré Césaire Almont to Celeste Adélaïde Malindin. Preface to the novella The Sabots, written by the author upon republication. Do you remember, madam, our meeting in that southern hotel? I haven't seen you in over 2 months, and yet, though, truthfully, I've already said everything, despite your refusal to listen. When I entered the lounge, I saw you at once, seated at the far end of the room, across from your husband. I feel no affection for him, and he seems to sense it, which I don't mind in the least. I approached your table, they brought another place setting, and we began chatting like strangers. You called him too, and me vous, and that made my heart boil with rage. But sometimes I caught your gaze, and then it seemed to me that it was I you called too, and him vous. I longed unbearably to embrace you right there in front of him, and if he got angry, to smash a carafe over his head, which he'd have every right to protest. After lunch, we walked for a long time along the shore of the sleeping sea. You walked arm in arm with him, and I, on the other side, kept trying to catch your hand, finally did, and felt it squeeze mine. That is the highest joy of love. A hand clasp can give a sense of deeper, fuller, more absolute possession than a whole night's embrace. Night fell. You returned home with your husband, and I sat alone by the shore for a long time. When the house was asleep, I took a candle and went to my room. I walked quietly down the corridor, past the doors to the bedrooms, and suddenly I recognized your boots, small travel boots, empty and weary, nestled between 2 large men's shoes, as if guarded by them. One boot even lay atop a big shoe, as if resting there. A storm rose within me. I wanted to break down the door and kill you both in bed. It was one of the most agonizing torments of my love. I stood there for a long time, candle in hand, staring at those shoes huddled together by the locked door. Had I seen you in his arms, I could not have suffered more. That burning memory clenched my heart even now, as I told this village tale, which bears a certain resemblance, by the shoes at least, to that moment. I dedicate this simple story to you in memory of my suffering. Ladies and gentlemen, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Share your thoughts and impressions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.